So, Kevin, we're performing a film autopsy on Splice.
Splice, which we just saw this afternoon.
Oh, so, can you say in a few words what the movie is about?
Well, it's about some of the science and then some of the ethical implications of creating a new species out of combining the DNA of several existing species. One of the most important DNA they use is that of a human, and then the film kind of spins into this bit of a sci-fi thriller. It has moments of insight and raises some interesting questions and issues. But interestingly enough, some of the more interesting aspects of the film come around the interpersonal relations. And I say interpersonal in quotes, but between the interspecies relations in the film. Do you want to say a little something about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there were a lot of interesting elements surrounded by monumental stupidity of the entire premise, but the interpersonal relations, I think, were about, I would say, about 15 to 20 minutes in the film are phenomenal. Mm-hmm. That's where you can bring in much darker elements, much more controversial elements in it, and here is something that I would put out, and if somebody wants to see the movie, I think that's where it would be. I mean, I think there are elements of issues of abuse coming in, abuse of children coming in, and also I would almost go as far as to say that perhaps issue of incest being brought up.
Yes.
And I think
yes.
so. I think there were those elements which were fascinating, mm-hmm. but I don't want to give a false impression. Those small islands of very interesting themes are surrounded by mountains of stupidity.
Yeah, I think you could take this film apart and re-splice it, if you will, and you could put together, I think, a very smart 40-minute film just dealing with some of the ethical issues related to bringing about a new life form. How is one going to treat it once that life form achieves a significant degree of agency and free will? Then how do you negotiate with this life form? I mean, those are things that the film does deal with, but overall they're couched within 2 hours of an otherwise kind of I was going to say sloppy, but I'd say almost schizophrenic film. It doesn't quite know what it wants to be, this film.
Yeah, it seems like, and we were talking about it right after the film, that it seems like there are multiple writers involved.
And
there are 3 screenwriters, and I think there is one somewhere in the middle who's very smart and who's very ambitious, surrounded by 2 who are being pushed by the studio, wanting this movie to be more conventional sci-fi horror genre. And I think when it comes to the thought-provoking part, and I think I was actually really fascinated with those angles, and also the potentialities, because this movie could have really taken off. I would say 2 things about even the conventional parts. There are some unexpected things. It defies genre. So sometimes the creation, if you might, would act in ways slightly unexpectedly. But then you would have very cheesy dialogue saying, for example, well, what can go wrong with this? Or, for example, right before, by the way, inserting sort of like human DNA and splicing it with animal, which was also one of the things, by the way, I have to mention. Which animal they never say, but it seems that it is a combination of all animals. So the species they create can breathe underwater, can grow wings, can fly at super fast speeds,
can dance.
Can dance, has legs like cheetah,
a tail like a scorpion.
A tail like a scorpion. So it is a really, I mean, in some sense, this is a truly a spectacular scientific achievement if science actually can produce this kind of a species.
Yeah. The science was a little inconsistent and a little sloppy at times. And I think we pointed out, or we were talking earlier about how the characters themselves, played by Adrian Brody and Sarah Polley, at times they're thinking very scientifically and kind of, there's kind of cold rationality, and then and then in another scene it's all about their emotional reaction to something, and so they're kind of shoddy, inconsistent scientists in that sense.
And there is a problem where when you have actors that look smarter, that overall their characters are smarter, but then they act really stupidly.
Yes.
And so, and I was also worried because I do sometimes surveys that involve sort of like interviews with humans, like, how did they get IRBs, like, the review board permissions for some of the experiments they were doing? I was very perplexed by that. So ultimately, Kevin, did you like the film? Would you recommend it? Let's put it this way.
Yes, I would recommend it. But go in. Don't go in if you're just looking for a scientific, a sci-fi thriller, a sci-fi horror. It is smarter than that. It's just, unfortunately, it doesn't uphold its that end of the bargain as much as you would like it to. But it is good acting, good production design, good cinematography. The story is interesting, but be prepared for some cheesy, really kind of really elementary moments in the narrative where you say, oh my god, I can't believe they're actually going there. I thought this film was smarter than that. And you?
Well, I had a problem. I actually cannot recommend it. I mean, I think if you're watching it on television, I think that's great. Wait for the 15 to 20 minutes that come about maybe half an hour before the end of the film. I think those are phenomenal. Rest of it was just too bothersome, and so just avoid it. I think a better movie is waiting to be made about the issue of life. Should
we wait for Christopher Nolan to do his version of something like this?
Yes,
or Tarantino to do a version of this.
Well, I would wait for Christopher Nolan, and of course, Coen Brothers can do that a much better job. But okay, well, I think right, this is the Autopsy.
One yes.
The movie is dead for me, and it died of unnatural causes.
I think the film is worth keeping alive, but definitely in a cage.